Now, your second question I'm going to be very quick about. The reason is very simple. You're asking why is there something rather than nothing, and I have already produced a long playlist called Ontology, which you can find on my channel, in which I've already addressed anything you could have possibly said in your video. So check it out. Now, your third and fourth question I'm going to have to address together, because they are pretty much intermeshed as far as I'm concerned. You are talking about where does morality come from, where does a person get their morality from? I find that question extraordinary. I cannot understand how anybody can ask that question, because after all, a moral sense is innate to anybody who is emotionally healthy. Have you never looked at exploitation or somebody hurting somebody else and felt that wrenching feeling in your gut of unfairness, where you thought, this is just not right? If you haven't, I am afraid that you are in fact a psychopath, because it is natural to anybody who is emotionally healthy to empathize with other people. And that is why we behave in a moral way. We feel empathy with other people. If we see somebody being hurt, our mirror neurons, or whatever you want to call them, cause us to feel sympathy with that person, to sort of feel the pain ourselves. We cringe if we see something like that happen. It doesn't feel right. If we inflict pain on somebody else, to a normal, healthy, emotionally healthy human being, that does not feel right. And that is what informs our morality. What feels right, what doesn't feel right. Now, of course, not everybody agrees perfectly with what does or doesn't feel right. But there are certain things that most people do agree on. We do agree that hurting somebody is not right. We do agree that killing somebody is not right. Why that is the case is a different question. Now we can go to how did all that evolve? Well, we are, as you undoubtedly know, a very gregarious species. So we are, we Homo sapiens. We tend to gather together in groups. We don't live as individuals doing our own thing. We always live in groups, cliques. Why is that the case? Nobody is entirely sure, but what is pretty obvious from an evolutionary perspective is that we must have gone through some sort of bottleneck, at which point a lot of us were dying out rapidly, and only those who had a natural tendency to help each other out, for whatever reason, that is the random input into the evolutionary process, those had a better chance at surviving. So those are the genes that were passed on, the genes for cooperation with each other. We evolved into small bands of people working together. That was necessary for us to survive. Those of us who didn't do that didn't survive for some reason. So then we came out of this at the other end of the bottleneck, where we started expanding again as a gregarious species that cooperate, that live together. And that is what has informed our sense of morality. That is why we empathize with other people. That is why we feel bad if we see something bad happening to somebody else. So there is no need to point at evolution and say this is all about survival of the fittest, and that cannot therefore explain how this could have happened. Of course it can. It just shows that in order for individuals to survive, sometimes the best strategy is to cooperate with other individuals. And if that is a persistent situation for long enough time, it gets embedded in into those individuals' genetic information, because those have the the people who possessed that information are the ones who kept on surviving over and over and over again until the danger had passed. One thing you said does make sense though. You're talking about that caveman. The caveman who would go out and clobber another caveman from another tribe over the head and not think twice about it. Well, people are like that, I accept. The reason being that we are used very much to always divide the world into us and them. We had to do this originally because it was safe within our own little tribe, and anything on the outside spelled danger. The problem is that our evolution has proceeded to that point, whereas our society has moved on in leaps and bounds. At the moment, our whole world is interconnected in some way or another. So if we are looking at other people, we can no longer claim that they are on the outside and we are on the inside. We cannot say it's us and them. But of course, that doesn't change that is how we have been wired over the last several 100,000 years. So we still do. And that is why we have racism, that is why we split the world along religious lines, that is why we split the world along political lines. But it doesn't change the fact that the world is becoming more and more interconnected. This has been the case ever since people grouped together into units as big as towns and cities. So what have we done to address this? We have codified our morality in a way that we could allow for such larger groups to live together, even though our evolutionary traits still dictated to us to split the world into us and them. But in a large group like a city, we have to live together somehow. And that is why we invented laws that are loosely based on our innate morality, the morality that has evolved along with us as a species, but also is geared towards making such larger units work efficiently. That is why some laws seem to make so little sense, and that is why there will always be people who cannot adapt to such laws and become either criminals or eccentrics. So we have to deal with this moral problem, and therefore we have to impose a moral code on other people as a society. That doesn't mean that moral code has to be absolute. Societies change over time. We are also still evolving, albeit of course slowly. But therefore our morality and our laws have to adapt as things change in our societies, which can be quite rapidly, and during our evolution, which is going to be quite slow. And absolute morality in fact makes absolutely no sense.